We made an astonishing discovery yesterday. I don't know if you were listening. But it was one of those little mysteries that was a bit like a sort of toothache. It was a mild toothache. I was conscious of it, but it wasn't keeping me awake at night. I'd only notice it if I, for example, crunched down upon a Smartie, and I'd get a little shot of pain going through a back molar. I'd be fine if I was eating a sandwich, but if you've got a Tic Tac more than a Smartie, if you've just got that kind of toothache and it's fine and you're all right with it, but if you just crunch a Tic Tac in exactly the wrong position, then oh my days, I must go. So it's a bit like that, and it was that phrase "deep state." That was my Tic Tac toothache, the deep state, because I mean it happened in America, and I don't worry or think as deeply about what's going on in America as I do about what's going on here. And then Boris Johnson said it after his rejection by his own party, and he talked about how the deep state was going to spoil Brexit or something like that, and it was absolute nonsense, of course, but it really troubled me. It started like a mild toothache. It really nagged me. Nagged is a good word, isn't it? Nagging pain. That's what we're talking. It nagged me, and yesterday together we worked out why. Because Donald Trump, of course, has supporters in America and indeed in the Daily Mail, perhaps inevitably today, arguing that the FBI investigating him is some sort of injustice or witch hunt is, of course, the phrase that Nadine Dorries used to describe Boris Johnson being investigated. We're in a place now where Boris Johnson and Donald Trump's supporters, or cult members, I think more accurately, are demonstrating conclusively that they know their man is guilty because they're furious about the prospect of investigation. The sort of people who'd usually subscribe to the mantra that if you've got nothing to hide, you've got nothing to fear, are absolutely bloody terrified of seeing their man, whether it's Donald Trump or Boris Johnson, actually held to account for their actions. Of course, if Donald Trump's got absolutely nothing to hide and nothing to fear, then he wouldn't be having an absolute hissy fit about yesterday's raid, and neither would his supporters. And if Boris Johnson had nothing to hide and nothing to fear, then the investigation by the Privileges Committee wouldn't be giving the heebie-jeebies to everybody from the editor of the Daily Mail right through to Nadine Dorries, bless her cotton socks. So, whether or not they're too thick to realise that they're essentially holding up a massive banner saying, "My man is guilty, please do not investigate him," I don't know anymore. But the reason why the phrase deep state has entered into our vocabulary is in order to pass the buck still further, in order to make what is actually happening in a country that was governed by Donald Trump and by Boris Johnson is not their fault. It's nothing to do with them, whether it's the COVID casualty list, whether it's the cost of living crisis, whether it is most obviously in Britain, the abject failure of Brexit. It's nothing to do with them. Anything that goes wrong is the fault of invisible magicians, or the deep state, as they prefer to call it. It's a bit like, in ancient times, blaming the sun gods for the crops failing and having to make human sacrifices to make it rain. And that is what the deep state is. It's prehistoric deities. It's the idea of there being unseen forces, powers that are invisible, secretly exercising enormous influence over events, which means that the people in charge of events, the people in actual government, have no power or control whatsoever over anything. And it's why we also see the word blob appear sometimes in political discourse from the right wing. It's incredible. I feel incredibly liberated by that discovery yesterday, and I'm so grateful to everyone who sort of rang in and nudged the conversation in that direction until suddenly the clouds cleared. And if Keith had been paying attention, he'd have played the Hallelujah chorus, because suddenly it became clear to me. That's why they go on about the deep state. Well done. Better late than never, Keith. And it comforts me, because understanding things makes them better. However mad things may be, if you understand them, it gets better. And that, in many ways, is the whole point of this programme and the time that we spend together. And also, given that I'm on a bit of a roll here, it's also why we won't be talking about the energy crisis every day, because we understand it already. So the purpose of the questing conversations is not in play on that. So today, something else that I want your help understanding. Something else that I think is part of this desperate attempt to pass the buck, evade responsibility, duck justice and scrutiny, remove your cult leaders from the spotlight, because how dare you investigate these men as if they are normal men, as if they are innocent men, as if they are ordinary men? How dare you investigate them? They're priests, they're high priests, they're demigods. You can't investigate them. It's a witch hunt, despite the fact that the House of Commons voted for the Privileges Committee to investigate Boris Johnson. It's a witch hunt. And one way in which it has evolved, and one way in which I think it reflects the deep state nonsense, is this conversation about the media. So Liz Truss was in front of a bunch of Tories last night on one of those weird new TV channels that's designed and paid for by billionaires who think the British media isn't biased enough already. There's a thought, hey? And well, you listen to this and listen to the crowd and listen to Liz Truss, who is almost certainly going to be your next Prime Minister.
Are you clear Boris Johnson's downfall was of his own making or someone else's?
Media. It sounds like you're being blamed, Tom, and, who am I to disagree with this excellent audience?
So it was the media's fault that multiple Conservative ministers resigned, multiple Conservative MPs submitted letters of no confidence in Boris Johnson, and the media's fault that Boris Johnson decided his position had become unsustainable. Now, what I want you to tell me, and we can do it like we always do it, either you tell me because you're one of the people shouting the media, you believe it, you mean it. It's the media's fault that Boris Johnson, who enjoyed supine and sycophantic support from pretty much every corner of Fleet Street and those elements of broadcast media that are permitted to have opinions, which automatically, of course, excludes the BBC. Which media are they talking about? What media are they talking about? Who are these people who think that the British media has been opposed to Boris Johnson? 2 weeks on the front page of the Daily Mail, Keir Starmer's entirely inoffensive and innocuous curry. 2 entire weeks it was there, while Boris Johnson's Downing Street was hosting more parties than Stringfellows. I mean, that might need a slight update for younger listeners. I don't know, Wayne Lineker was hosting more parties than Wayne Lineker. And that is apparently a media which has somehow done for Boris Johnson. So either you're one of these people and you're convinced that the media is actually to blame for the fact that multiple Conservative ministers resigned their positions and countless Conservative MPs submitted letters of no confidence, and Boris Johnson's closest advisors told him that the situation had become unsupportable. You think it was the media's fault. Give me a call and tell me who you mean. But what are you talking about? What are these institutions that wield such epic power and hold Boris Johnson in particular in such contempt? Because I should apply for a job there. I mean, that sounds like my kind of place, doesn't it? Who on earth are they talking about, these people in the crowd? 0345 6060 973. Gary in Halifax is on the same page as me. He writes, James, blaming the media is the British version of blaming the deep state. He then adds, I think ridiculously, I predict another brilliant show. And of course, as ever now, given the 52-48% split that still pervades the nation, it may be that we have to do it secondhand. So you know people like them in the crowd. And they say the media has done it's the media's fault that Boris Johnson has resigned as Prime Minister. I don't know anyone like that, I don't think. I just don't. I don't know anyone, and I'm not going to be rude. But who are they talking about? I don't know whether you say to them, who do you mean, Dad? Which media has I mean, you've got The Sun, you've got The Express, you've got The Telegraph, you've got Rupert Murdoch, so even when the Times does some grown-up journalism, you know that it's only being offered up largely as a sort of sop to the extremities of the Sun. You've got these weird new television stations. You've got most talk radio hosts, speech radio hosts. You've got entire stations dedicated to Brexit and Boris Johnson, but somehow the media was responsible for Boris Johnson's defenestration. You've got a denuded, cowardly BBC that's frightened of saying boo to a goose, forced an apology out of Newsnight when Emily Maitlis made perfectly reasonable comments about the state of the coronavirus management. So it can't be the BBC that's done for Boris Johnson. They've got the BBC running scared. Nadine Dorries is threatening to close them down all the time. So who do you mean? What is this media that Liz Truss agrees was responsible for getting rid of Boris Johnson? Liz Truss, who sits in a cabinet from which many, many, many ministers actually and publicly resigned, thinks that somehow the media was pulling their strings? You see how ridiculous it is? 0345 6060 973. Maybe they're talking about what's Nish Kumar's show called that everyone gets their knickers in a twist about? But even that's been axed, hasn't it? By that. So what is the media that they discuss? You know these people. I currently don't. So you can be my tour guide. I've just realised what this programme is now. This is where you come to take your virtual reality headset off every morning, isn't it? This is where you come. You put your virtual reality headset on. Oh, it's the media's fault that Boris Johnson has had to resign. You take it off and you just go, whoa. No, it really isn't. Oh, of course is it. We leave the door open for the possibility that I'm missing some epic elephant in this particular room. What is the media that these people speak of? The media that got rid of Boris Johnson? Because if they're that big and that powerful, then, you know, next time my contract's up for renegotiation, I might see if they want to come in with a better offer.